Every Monday morning at Nexus Technologies, one employee doesn't show up for work. Not sick, not on vacation, not fired, just gone. Their desk sits empty, their projects abandoned, their keycard still works, but it's like they never existed. Security cameras show them leaving Friday evening, but they never make it back Monday morning. Detective Rachel Torres thought it was just coincidence until she realized the terrifying pattern that connected each disappearance. Detective Rachel Torres had worked plenty of missing persons cases, but nothing quite like this. She stood in the sleek lobby of Nexus Technologies, watching employees stream through the glass doors with their Monday morning coffee and tired expressions. Everything looked normal. Corporate. Professional. But upstairs on the 14th floor, someone's desk would be empty today. Just like it had been every Monday for the past 2 months. "Thank you for coming, Detective," said Margaret Chen, the HR director who'd called this in. She was a sharp woman in her 40s, with perfectly styled hair and the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I know this seems unusual, but we're starting to get concerned." 8 employees in 8 weeks, Rachel said, checking her notes. "That's not a coincidence. That's what we thought too." But the police said there wasn't enough evidence of foul play to investigate. "People quit jobs all the time," they said. But these people didn't quit. They just stopped coming. Margaret led Rachel through the security checkpoint and into the elevator. The building was impressive, all glass and steel, with motivational posters about teamwork and innovation covering the walls. But there was something off about the atmosphere. The employees they passed in the hallway seemed tense, like they were all waiting for something bad to happen. "Tell me about the first disappearance," Rachel said as they rode up to the 14th floor. "Jason Martinez, from our IT department. 32 years old, been with the company for 6 years. Excellent employee, no problems, no complaints. Left work Friday evening at 5:47 p.m. Security cameras caught him walking out through the main entrance. But Monday morning, he didn't show up. Didn't call, didn't answer his phone." The elevator doors opened onto a typical open-plan office. Dozens of cubicles filled the space, with glass-walled conference rooms along the perimeter and corner offices for the executives. Most of the desks were occupied, but Rachel could see one that stood out, completely clean, with no personal items, no computer, nothing to indicate someone worked there. "That was Jason's desk," Margaret said, following Rachel's gaze. "We left it empty for a week, thinking he'd come back. When he didn't, we had to reassign his projects. What about his personal belongings? Gone. But here's the strange part, no one remembers him taking them. Security footage shows him leaving with just his briefcase on Friday, same as every day. But when we checked his desk Monday morning, it was completely cleared out. No family photos, no coffee mug, no plants. Nothing." Rachel walked over to the empty desk. It was in the middle of the floor, surrounded by other workstations where people were typing, talking on phones, attending video calls. How could someone clear out an entire desk without anyone noticing? "Who sits near here?" she asked. Margaret pointed to the adjacent cubicles. "Sandra Williams on the left, Tom Foster on the right, and behind him is Lisa Park. They would have been the ones most likely to notice if Jason was packing up." Rachel decided to start with Sandra. She was a woman in her late 20s with blonde hair and nervous eyes. The moment Rachel introduced herself as a detective, Sandra's face went pale. "You're here about the disappearances," Sandra said. It wasn't a question. "What can you tell me about Jason Martinez?" Sandra glanced around the office, as if checking to see who might be listening. "Can we talk somewhere private?" They moved to an empty conference room, and Sandra closed the door behind them. What Sandra told Rachel next would reveal the first clue about what was really happening at Nexus Technologies. "Jason didn't just disappear," Sandra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "None of them did. They were taken." "Taken? By who?" "I don't know. But I saw what happened to Jason. Friday afternoon, around 4 o'clock, he got a phone call. I sit right next to him, so I could hear bits of the conversation. Someone was asking him to stay late, work on some urgent project. Rachel made notes. Did he seem concerned about the request? That's the thing, he seemed excited. Like he'd been chosen for something special. After he hung up, he told me he'd been selected for a new initiative. Something about advancing to the next level of his career. Did he say who called him? He said it was someone from upper management. But when I asked which department, he got this weird look on his face. Like he couldn't remember. Or like he wasn't supposed to say. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. What happened after that? He worked normally for the rest of the day. Left at his usual time. But detective, here's what's really strange. The next Monday, when his desk was empty, I mentioned to Tom and Lisa that Jason was missing. They looked at me like I was crazy. What do you mean? They said there was never anyone named Jason Martinez in IT. Said that desk had been empty for months. But I worked next to him for 2 years. I knew him. We had lunch together every Wednesday. Sandra was shaking now, and Rachel could see genuine fear in her eyes. I started paying more attention after that. Every few weeks, someone else would get the same kind of phone call. Always on Friday afternoon. Always about some special project or opportunity. And the next Monday, they'd be gone. And everyone else would act like they'd never existed. Rachel was about to discover that Sandra wasn't the only one who remembered the missing employees. Is there anyone else who remembers these people? Rachel asked. Sandra hesitated. There's a janitor who works the night shift. Carlos. I've seen him in the break room sometimes, and he's mentioned things that don't make sense unless you know about the disappearances. They found Carlos in the supply closet on the 15th floor. He was a man in his 60s with graying hair and tired eyes, the kind of person who becomes invisible to most office workers. But when Rachel showed him her badge, his expression became guarded. You're here about the missing people, he said in accented English. You remember them? Carlos nodded slowly. I cleaned their desks every night for months, years sometimes. Then one Monday, the desk is empty. Completely clean. Like no one ever worked there. But I know someone did. I seen their pictures, their coffee cups, their little plants. What do you think happened to them? Something bad. I work here 15 years, and this only started happening 8 months ago. Right after they renovated the top floor. Rachel's pulse quickened. What's on the top floor? Executive offices. But they added something else. New conference room. Very fancy. Soundproof walls, special lighting. They call it the Innovation Hub. Have you seen anyone go up there? Only executives. And sometimes, on Friday nights, I see other people going up. Regular employees. But they always look different. Excited, but also scared. Like they don't know what they're walking into. Carlos leaned closer, lowering his voice. Detective, I think they're still here. In the building. I hear things sometimes, late at night when I'm cleaning. Voices from the top floor. Sounds like people working, typing, talking. But according to the building directory, those offices are empty after 6 p.m. When Rachel accessed the building's security footage, she discovered something that challenged everything she thought she knew about the case. Rachel convinced Margaret to give her access to the security system. They went down to the building's control room in the basement, where banks of monitors showed feeds from cameras throughout the building. I want to see the footage from last Friday night, Rachel said. The security guard, a young man named Kevin, pulled up the recordings. What time? Start around 4 p.m. and run it through the weekend. Rachel watched the normal flow of a Friday afternoon. Employees finishing their work, gathering their things, heading for the elevators. Around 5:30, the building started to empty out as people left for the weekend. But at 6:15 p.m., something unusual happened. Stop there, Rachel said. Rewind that. On the monitor showing the 14th floor, she could see a woman walking toward the elevators. She was carrying a briefcase and looked excited, almost nervous. Rachel didn't recognize her from the employee list. "Kevin, who is that?" Kevin squinted at the monitor. "I don't know. I've never seen her before." But Sandra, who had stayed to help with the investigation, gasped. "That's Michelle Rodriguez. She disappeared 3 weeks ago." "Disappeared? But this footage is from last Friday." "That's impossible," Sandra said. "Michelle went missing the Monday after the company picnic. That was 3 weeks ago." Rachel fast-forwarded the footage. At 6:22 p.m., Michelle entered the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. The camera in the elevator showed her looking increasingly nervous as it rose. "Show me the top floor cameras," Rachel said. Kevin switched feeds. The top floor was dimly lit, with only emergency lighting visible. But as they watched, Michelle stepped out of the elevator and walked down a hallway lined with executive offices. At 6:25 p.m., she disappeared from view as she entered a room at the end of the hall. "What room is that?" Rachel asked Margaret. Margaret checked the building plans. "That's the Innovation Hub. The new conference room Carlos mentioned." Rachel had Kevin fast-forward through the rest of the night. Michelle never came back out of that room. The cameras showed the hallway remaining empty until Monday morning, when executives started arriving for work. But when Rachel tried to access Monday morning's footage, the security system revealed something impossible. "Show me Monday morning," Rachel said. Kevin pulled up the footage from the following Monday. The executives arrived as usual, but something was wrong with the timestamp. According to the system, it was showing the Monday from 3 weeks ago, the day Michelle Rodriguez was supposed to have first disappeared. "This doesn't make sense," Kevin muttered, checking the system settings. "The dates are all mixed up." Rachel studied the footage more carefully. There, walking into the building Monday morning, was Michelle Rodriguez. She looked exactly the same as in Friday's footage, same clothes, same briefcase, same nervous expression. "Run the footage forward," Rachel said. They watched Michelle go through her normal workday. She sat at her desk, attended meetings, worked on her computer. Everything appeared normal until 4:15 p.m., when her desk phone rang. Even through the grainy security footage, Rachel could see Michelle's face change as she answered the call. Excitement, nervousness, anticipation. The same expression she'd worn on Friday night. At 5:45 p.m., Michelle gathered her things and headed for the elevator. But instead of going down to the lobby, she went up to the top floor. "This is the same day," Sandra whispered. "She's living the same day over and over." Rachel realized the horrifying truth about what was happening to the missing employees. "Pull up the footage from every Monday for the past 8 weeks, Rachel ordered. Kevin's hands were shaking as he accessed the files. One by one, they watched the security footage from each Monday. And in every single recording, they saw the same thing. All 8 missing employees, living the same day repeatedly. Jason Martinez getting the same phone call, showing the same excitement, taking the same elevator to the top floor. Michelle Rodriguez, David Kim, Patricia Santos, Robert Chen, Lisa Walker, Michael Thompson, and Sarah Johnson, all trapped in an endless loop of their final Monday at Nexus Technologies. "But how is that possible?" Margaret asked, her voice barely audible. Rachel was starting to piece it together, and the picture forming in her mind was terrifying. The Innovation Hub. What exactly was installed up there during the renovation? Margaret pulled out her tablet and accessed the renovation records. According to this, it was fitted with state-of-the-art virtual reality equipment, brain-computer interfaces for advanced market research and product development. Brain-computer interfaces? Technology that can read and interpret neural signals. The company said it would revolutionize how we understand consumer behavior. Employees could experience products and services directly through their thoughts and emotions. Rachel felt her blood turn cold. And the missing employees were all selected to test this technology? I suppose so. But these are just prototype tests. Nothing dangerous. Sandra grabbed Rachel's arm. Detective, what if they're not just testing the technology? What if they're trapped in it? When Rachel demanded access to the Innovation Hub, she discovered that Margaret had been lying about everything. I need to see that room. Now, Rachel said. Margaret's professional composure finally cracked. I can't. I don't have clearance for the top floor. You're the HR director. You don't have access to a conference room? It's not just a conference room, Margaret admitted. It's a restricted research facility. Only certain executives and the research team can enter. Rachel studied Margaret's face and realized something crucial. You've known what's happening all along, haven't you? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. The employees weren't randomly selected. They were chosen because they had no close family, no one who would immediately notice if they disappeared. We, the company. We needed test subjects for the neural interface project. Test subjects? These are human beings. They volunteered. Well, technically they volunteered. The phone calls on Friday afternoons weren't from upper management. They were from an AI system that analyzed employee profiles and identified the most suitable candidates. It would call them and use psychological manipulation techniques to make them excited about participating. Sandra stared at Margaret in horror. You mean the company is kidnapping its own employees? Not kidnapping. Recruiting for advanced research. The neural interfaces are supposed to create perfect virtual work environments. Employees can be more productive, more creative, more satisfied with their jobs. It's the future of work. Rachel grabbed Margaret by the arm. Where are they? Are they still alive? I don't know. I'm not part of the research team. I just help identify potential candidates and handle the paperwork after they disappear. Rachel was about to discover that she had just become the next target. Rachel's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Detective Torres. Good afternoon, Detective. My name is Dr. Harrison Webb, Chief Technology Officer at Nexus Technologies. I understand you're investigating some missing persons reports related to our company. That's right. I'd like to invite you up to our Innovation Hub. I think you'll find the answers you're looking for very illuminating. 15th floor, room 1547. Can you be here in 10 minutes? Rachel looked at Margaret, whose face had gone completely white. Dr. Webb wants to meet with me. Don't go, Margaret whispered. Please don't go up there. But Rachel was already heading for the elevator. Kevin, call for backup. If I'm not back down in 30 minutes, send every available unit to the 15th floor. As the elevator doors closed, Rachel heard Sandra shouting something, but the words were muffled. The elevator began to rise, but instead of stopping at the 15th floor, it continued upward to floors that shouldn't exist according to the building directory. When the doors finally opened, Rachel found herself in a corridor that looked nothing like the rest of the building. The walls were lined with strange machinery, banks of computers, and what looked like medical equipment. The air hummed with electronic sounds, servers, cooling systems, and something else she couldn't identify. What Rachel found in the Innovation Hub was far worse than anything she had imagined. Dr. Webb was waiting for her at the end of the corridor. He was a tall, thin man in his 50s with graying hair and intense eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a white lab coat over his business suit. Detective Torres, welcome to the future of human consciousness. The room behind him was massive, much larger than any single floor should accommodate. Along the walls were what looked like hospital beds, but with advanced computer equipment connected to each one. And in those beds, Rachel's breath caught in her throat. She could see people lying motionless, with wires and sensors attached to their heads. Screens above each bed displayed brainwave patterns and other vital signs. Are they alive? She managed to ask. More than alive, Dr. Webb said proudly. They're experiencing perfect existence. No stress, no pain, no disappointment. Just pure, productive consciousness focused on their work. Rachel counted 8 beds. 8 people. The missing employees. This is insane. You've kidnapped these people and turned them into some kind of living computers. Kidnapped? Detective, these individuals volunteered for the most advanced consciousness research project in human history. They're not prisoners, they're pioneers. Rachel pulled out her phone to call for backup, but there was no signal. I'm afraid communication is restricted in this area, Dr. Webb said. Too much electromagnetic interference from our equipment. Let me guess, I'm here because you want to recruit me for your project too. Dr. Webb smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. Actually, Detective, you're here because you pose a threat to our research. You've learned too much, and you have the authority to shut us down. Dr. Webb revealed the true scope of Nexus Technologies' plan, and Rachel realized she might never leave the building alive. This project goes far beyond Nexus Technologies, Dr. Webb continued, gesturing to the banks of equipment surrounding them. We have facilities like this in 17 countries. Thousands of test subjects contributing to the development of perfect virtual work environments. You're talking about enslaving people. I'm talking about evolution. Physical bodies are inefficient, Detective. They get tired, they get sick, they have emotional needs that interfere with productivity. But consciousness? Pure thought? That can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without breaks, without complaints, without demands for higher wages or better benefits. Rachel backed toward the door, but found her way blocked by 2 security guards she hadn't heard approach. Within 5 years, Dr. Webb said, we'll have the technology to transfer human consciousness completely into digital form. No more need for physical offices, physical resources, physical limitations. Entire workforces existing as pure information, solving problems and generating profits at the speed of thought. And if people refuse to participate? That's where the neural interfaces come in handy. A few hours connected to our system, and most people find the virtual environment so appealing that they don't want to leave. Those who resist, well, we have ways of making the virtual world seem like their own choice. Rachel looked at the 8 beds again. The people lying there looked peaceful, almost content. But she could see the restraints holding them in place. What happens to their families? Their lives outside of work? Irrelevant. In the virtual environment, we can simulate any relationship, any experience they desire. They can have better families, better lives, better everything. All while contributing to the most productive workforce in human history. As Dr. Webb prepared to add Rachel to his collection, she realized there was only one way to stop him. The security guards moved closer, and Rachel saw that they were carrying what looked like a modified headset, presumably the device used to connect people to the neural interface system. I have to admit, Detective, you'll make an interesting addition to our research. Law enforcement perspectives could be valuable for our security protocols. Rachel's mind raced. Her backup was supposed to arrive in 20 minutes, but that assumed they could find this hidden floor. And even if they did, how many other people would Dr. Webb capture while expanding his operation? She looked at the control panels managing the 8 beds. Each one showed different readings: brain activity, vital signs, neural interface status. But on one of the screens, she noticed something odd. Jason Martinez's readings were different from the others. His brain activity showed spikes and patterns that didn't match the steady states of the other subjects. Almost like he was fighting the system. Dr. Webb, what happens if someone tries to resist the neural interface while they're connected? Impossible. Once the connection is established, the subject's consciousness is fully integrated with our virtual environment. They experience whatever reality we create for them. But Rachel was studying Jason's readings more carefully. The patterns looked like someone trying to communicate. Like someone who was aware of being trapped and was attempting to send a signal. You said this technology can read neural signals. Can it transmit them too? Dr. Webb's expression changed. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that if Jason Martinez is fighting your system, he might be able to help me shut it down. Rachel lunged for the control panel before the guards could stop her. She didn't know what most of the controls did, but she found the communication interface and activated it. Suddenly, the room was filled with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Help us." What happened next would determine whether Rachel could save the trapped employees or become the next victim of Nexus Technologies' horrific experiment. The voice was Jason Martinez, somehow speaking through the facility's sound system. "Detective, we're aware, trapped but aware." Dr. Webb was frantically typing at another control station. "Impossible. The consciousness integration protocols should prevent this kind of communication. We've been working together." Jason's voice continued, broken by static but understandable. 8 minds, connected, planning. Rachel realized what was happening. The missing employees hadn't been isolated in separate virtual realities. Dr. Webb's system had accidentally connected all their consciousnesses together, creating a collective intelligence that was fighting back. "What do you need me to do?" Rachel shouted at the speakers. "Main server, room 1550. Pull the power cores. We can survive 10 minutes without life support." Dr. Webb screamed at his guards. "Stop her. If she shuts down the main servers, we'll lose 8 months of research data." Rachel ran for the door, but the guards were faster. One of them tackled her to the ground, while the other approached with the neural interface headset. That's when the facility's lights began to flicker. "They're overloading the system from inside," Dr. Webb said, his voice filled with panic. "All subjects are coordinating some kind of feedback loop." Alarms started blaring throughout the building. Emergency lighting kicked in. And through the facility's intercom system, Rachel could hear 8 voices speaking in unison. "Everyone in the building, evacuate now. System failure in 3 minutes." The guards hesitated, looking between Rachel and Dr. Webb. Even they seemed to realize that staying in a building with failing electrical systems wasn't smart. "Go!" Dr. Webb shouted. "Save the research data." But as the guards ran for the exits, Rachel made her choice. Instead of escaping, she ran deeper into the facility, toward room 1550. The server room was a maze of humming machinery and blinking lights. She could see the power cores Jason had mentioned, large cylindrical units that seemed to be the heart of the neural interface system. As she reached for the first power core, the 8 voices spoke again. "Thank you, Detective. See you on the outside." Rachel yanked out the power core, and the room went dark. But as the facility went into total system failure, Rachel realized that shutting down the neural interfaces might not save the trapped employees, it might kill them permanently, leaving her as the only witness to Nexus Technologies' crimes, with no evidence and no way to prove what had really happened.